So, hi everyone, and welcome to the podcast. We are back in Wynwood today with a very special guest. As you know, I like to have so many different people who are doing so many different things in the art community, from art galleries, of course, artists. We have photographers. There's just so many aspects of the art. 2 weeks ago, we had Gina on the podcast who's doing some yarn bombing. That was something absolutely incredible, art.
When I first saw that, I didn't know what it was. And then when I saw this, wait, this is somebody's actually doing it. This is amazing. I can't even imagine how long it takes to put that together.
All right, so you know this voice? Do you know this voice? So this is Mr. Rabbit, Mr. Asaad, who's going to be on the podcast today. And of course, we're going to be talking about street art and tattooing today. So this is also another very, very interesting side of the art. How are you mixing tattooing, street art, and all those different things? So, Asaad, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a good warm day here in Miami.
Oh, it's always warm. It's warm. It's a hot day. It's another hot day. But thank God we are at the Art of Hip Hop, and it's nice and cold.
I mean, that Mercedes over there in the corner is keeping it nice and frosty.
Yes. Yes. So, street art, tattooing, Mr. Rabbit. Why Mr. Rabbit? Why was the first?
So it started out as, it's really interesting. I remember decades ago, I used to work at a Blockbuster video.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm dating you guys remember Blockbusters?
Yeah. So I remember one time I was just bored and I drew a little bunny rabbit. And I was like, oh, he's a cool little rabbit. And then I drew him with a tie. And I was like, he's a bunny, Mr. Bunny. So then I came up with that. And then fast forward a few years, I found myself in the tattoo industry. And that was a tattoo that I would give away. And at the time, the guy that was my boss was like, oh, you can't be giving away work, blah, 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 this and that.
Of course.
But it became almost like a bon mot. And, it got to the point where it started rolling and rolling and rolling in the sense that more people were getting it. And then, oh, the guy that gives away the free bunny rabbit tattoo, or oh my gosh, blah, 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 this and that. And then from that, it morphed into the second incarnation of it, which is the logo that you see now, or the rabbit that you see now, which is more of a running rabbit.
Yes.
So I was painting with some friends and drawing the original version bigger, because I got used to doing it as a tattoo, and tattoo has its own set of parameters to do it.
I'm sure.
But when you do it in aerosol and chalk, it's totally different, and more important, the speed.
Yes.
You can't sit there and just do a piece and sit back on it. You got to kind of turn and burn.
Turn and burn, exactly.
Yeah. So it was one of those things that I changed it up, and it kind of grabbed its fluidity. And then after a while, the name Mr. Bunny, there's so many people doing rabbits and this and that, and I love it because it's almost like that. I like the fact that it's almost like we are legion. There's all sorts of rabbits that are out there,
True.
So people would be like, oh, you did this rabbit. I'm like, no, that's another rabbit, but that's a cool rabbit, or that's a cool bunny. So then it kind of took another evolution where it turned into Rabbits 305. And then just the 305, acknowledging where I'm from, and then the rabbits. And then after a while, people introduced me, they're like, oh, that's rabbit. I'm like, all right, cool. And I kind of kept with it, which is interesting because as an artist, tattooing is very interesting because, like most arts, it gets to the point that if you study it long enough, you're able to see what an artist does. You're able to recognize an artist's work.
A style, yes, I'm sure.
Style. So I was always very big on that. And in the tattoo industry, not many times do you sign your work. I was very blessed and very lucky to leave, technically, my mark on somebody. And then on top of that, a tattoo that was genuinely defining me. So there was this certain level that I'm like, I'd rather you recognize my work. So it was one of those things that it was interesting because there was people that know me for certain pieces as Asaad Morales. There's certain people that are like, oh, that's Mr. Bunny, or oh, Rabbits 305. So I was always worried that was going to spread out too far, but I kind of like it because, again, with that whole thing that there's just different faces and different things that are going on, but still with the same purpose going forward.
I
So,
see that. And
yeah.
that's very strange because you mentioned something that I never ever crossed my mind.
Uh-huh.
Of course, being a tattoo artist, you're an artist, but you don't sign your work. That's true. It just
Yeah.
never occurred to me, that thing that you just said.
So
So you really have to find your style, there's different school, there's
Correct.
so many styles of
Yeah.
tattooing.
Well, Miami's very interesting because we're very diverse culturally, and
Very diverse.
Yeah, and a lot of that, specifically Miami, because I think the Miami tattoo scene prides itself in the fact that while we have great artists that are specific in what they do, they're also most artists, and at least I was trained that way. I was trained to catch whatever I can do through the door. So a lot of our artists, we share that, that, a guy can be really great at American traditional, really great at portrait, but I'm sure if just a bread and butter tattoo walks in through your door as a walk-in, they're able
Yes.
to do that as well. So a lot of that migrated over into my art, which not necessarily is a good thing, because what I do realize about the art world, just as much as the tattoo world, people that usually follow your art, if you kind of step left or stepped right into what is the status quo of your art, it's not necessarily, it takes people a little while to adapt, and some people genuinely know it. I've had people, the moment I don't do rabbits, oh, well, where are your bunny rabbits? And then parallel to that, I've had people tell me, oh, but do you only do bunny rabbits? So it's like a weird thing. It's like you gotta as an artist, you have to steer in the best way.
True.
And what I mean by that is basically you got to show them, yes, that's what I do. However, within the vein of this is my range. Because if not, you're going to get pigeonholed, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
I don't think this is a good thing. No,
yeah.
You really want to expand your horizon. You want to tattoo different things, paint different things,
Absolutely.
spray paint different things.
Absolutely. You got to be broad, and you got to be
broad, yes.
constantly evolving.
Constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So between the tattooing and whenever you go on the street and do some bombing, have you done any graffiti pieces? Or
I was lucky enough that I spent 2 decades formally in the tattoo industry, and I spent 13 years owning a shop. I'm sorry. And I took a pivot from the formality of that 4 years ago. So I've been exploring other avenues, getting in touch with the art of where I'm from, which is the Dominican Republic, as being one of the artists of the Dominican diaspora.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, bringing that back down. I was lucky enough to early on meet a lot of very cool artists that in the graffiti, in the outside, the vandalism world, the writers. And it was funny because the writers and the graffiti artists, and 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of great writers and great graffiti artists that are tattoo artists.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So I got lucky enough to hang with some guys, and I started like I did an apprenticeship. I was go get a can, go get some cigarettes, go get us some beer, watch over here. And, that's how you learned. And the humility that I learned in the tattoo industry, I carried that over into the graffiti, the bombing, and that world. And, I spend my time in it. I like to say that I put in the work, but it's a very interesting thing because since I didn't formally write, I just was mostly doing a character. There's a divide. It's like, are you a writer or are you a street artist? And that's something that with me, I understand. And I understand why there's the same thing in the tattoo industry, the difference between, being a person who's been through a formal apprenticeship and a person who learned by themselves and a person who's a kitchen magician, and I understand that, and I understand why those rules are put into place. So working within that system, which was something that I understood was in place, I still try to carve out a niche for myself. And I may not write right now, but I'll catch a charge just as much as you'll catch a charge. So there is this thing for a moment, but now again with everything evolving and with things changing, I see kids out there doing huge characters and huge things and putting in the work.
Characters have always been part of the graffiti scene.
Always. So it's this weird thing. It's like I feel like that's where I was at, and I did spend my time there, and then between traveling and between evolving as an artist and evolving as as a person, I started realizing, yes, that's cool, and I love it because I think it's I think for me, it's like it's the gamut. You need to be able to do as much as possible because that's stuff that people see. Well, graffiti is very interesting because it's a study in marketing at its finest. I have seen people that started up as illegal vandals, which are now receiving keys to cities.
Of course.
And now, working with very big brands because the proof is in the pudding. It's out there. They put it out there so many times and in places that advertisers would never dare to, and it's an experiment.
Absolutely.
You can see a lot of the parallels now because a lot of major brands are copying the formula of graffiti within their branding practices. Stencil work on sidewalks, stickers in bathroom, guerrilla marketing campaigns that you swear, is this a graffiti or is this a brand? So it's very interesting to see. And then, going back to myself as an artist, I started realizing that even though that was important, the collectors that did want a little bit more, something to hang on their walls, something to collect, something as a physical product or a garment. But even within that, giving the respect of everything, the people who taught me the things that I learned, and kind of keeping that within the general way of who I am and what I do.
So this was one of the questions. What kind of techniques and tools overlap between tattooing and your street art? This is more or less what you kind of described.
So funny you say that. What I started to do is I started to incorporate. So when I started 20 years ago, there was no Procreate, there was no iPad, there was none of that. You basically had a really good set of Prismacolors, you had a really good set of art markers, and you basically created your... Oh, and of course, the oldest technique in the book, which is watercolor spit shading, which is how a lot of the old stuff was done. Either you made your own flash or you got the old flash sheets that were not colored and then you colored them in yourself. So what I started to do is working with the way that I would set up a tattoo, I would actually transfer that over into a lot of my work when it comes to either canvas or wall art. And then with the advent, and I'm one of these people that literally got an iPad, got Procreate, saw what it was doing because people were not drawing. They were just literally doing everything on the computer. And at the time I owned my shop and I was like, nah, I'm not doing this. Just recently, as of October last year, I was in the Dominican Republic for an extended time, caring for a relative. So I was like, you know what, let me try this. And what I loved was I was able to create a lot of my mock-ups and use that, and also remembering my palette in tattooing, which is what I try to do is I try to keep my palette constrained so it kind of works within the color harmonies, which is the same thing that happens in tattooing, and also acknowledging negative space, black work, where to put a highlight, thick and thin line work, and that kind of thing. And then keeping a palette that's particular to what I do, but not letting myself get limited into it. So that's kind of where it melds in with the tattoo. I feel, for me, I feel strongly that anybody that did have a tattoo background that switches over into anything that's in the art world, they definitely have a leg up, in my opinion.
Yes.
You're doing it all day.
I can see that, yes.
Yeah.
Have you actually had a formal training? You went to school, design school or art school to learn all those different techniques and then eventually chose to go into tattooing versus just street art?
I fell into tattooing. I was working at a print shop, Original Impression, which was the print arm of Burger King at one time, right there behind the falls. And from there, my studies at Miami-Dade, I concluded that, and then went into the print world. Parallel to that, I did a couple odd jobs. So I always had art in the background, and I fell into tattooing. I was working in the print shop. Somebody was liking my drawings and introduced me to the person who, I went into their shop and later on became a business partner, and from there went forward. The leap into the art world as far as street art, graffiti, just kind of came along hand in hand. I met my graffiti friends before I met my street art friends, and then just pushed forward off of that. So it was like, how can I say it? I like to call it almost like an octopus approach. One morning I could be doing a tattoo, the next morning I could be doing a brand. I did a couple of brands out here in Miami, Holy Smokes, Miami Bake, Tacos and Tattoos, Thank You Miami. So, I'd get reached out to do those things, and, every day brought something new, but it was always art-focused.
Art-focused, yes.
Correct, yeah.
So, I do have myself a few tattoos.
Correct.
But you, as an artist, how do you learn to draw, to do something on the skin of a person? How do you feel it?
So it's very interesting because you go through a period in your apprenticeship where there's apprenticeships that start out with you tattooing yourself. There's apprenticeships that start out you tattooing pigskin. There's tattooing where you tattooing, everything from a watermelon to a tomato.
Oh, you really do this? Yes, some people are really doing that?
Absolutely. Well, that's how.
Okay.
Well, you learn on yourself.
You learn on
some
yourself,
people,
yes.
that's a thing, and I respect that. But there's also things that you also learn. And then, not for nothing, and I'm going to be very candid, trial by fire. That one buddy that comes around that you learn on, and you give him the respect that, hey, I'm learning on you, and down the line when I'm good enough, I will take care of anything that is maybe not the best. But
exactly.
There's a lot of it's a very interesting time in the tattoo industry because it's very polarizing, because I can literally right now sit there and order a tattoo kit and jump on between YouTube, TikTok. The knowledge is out there. It's not as close.
I'm sure.
Like we say, I think it's the door's wide open. The cat's out of the bag. The secret's out. So it's very interesting to see how it is. And also, you got to remember, when I learned, it was a coil tattoo machine with a 10-turn rheostat. Now there's machines that are basically it's not that it's out the door. I still use those machines. I give it mad respect.
Yeah.
But you can plug a cartridge into a machine, and if you have a general knowledge, you can more or less putter your way through it and then learn. And that's causing a great shift. It's a paradigm shift in the industry, because before you got to, sit there and get an apprenticeship, put in the work. There's people that are circumventing that and going forward. Is it a good thing? It's, again, another polarizing opinion, but it's just something different. And I think that's how I learn. And I'm very big on the empty vessel approach. I'm constantly learning. There's something new just the other day, I'm like, wow, that's a technique that I think I can incorporate into what I'm doing. And now we're at a period where tattoo was like a finality because it was so permanent. 10 laser treatments and it's gone. I mean,
true.
You black it out, which in my time in the tattoo industry, that's so new to me. I'm like, wait a second, what do you mean you want to just black out your arm? And
that's it seems to be a newer trend now to do tattoos on black it out totally and then re-tattooing on top.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very, very interesting.
I've seen that, and even like something that kind of is weirdly parallel to the graffiti world. There's people that blast over existing tattoos.
Yeah.
Almost like if you cap somebody, and I've seen that happen where I'm like, hey, like, you want to leave those other tattoos hanging out and you want to put something on top of that. And they're like, yeah, I like the aesthetic. So it's very interesting to see, but I feel that primitive need to be unique within a modification, because I think every human does that. They want to stand out. You want to look different. You want to wear a different.
Somehow you want to stand out.
Pierce your ear. You want to have a tattoo.
Exactly.
I think that's always going to be there. So.
Yeah. So what would be the most meaningful piece that you've ever created, beside that rabbit that you really created, who comes from you? Is that more something on the skin of someone's skin, or on a wall? What's something really meaningful that you created?
I think everything that I've done within tattooing and within art. So if you're an artist, you live with a certain degree of immortality. We're still talking about first century artists all the way to people from the Renaissance, artists. I mean, Purvis Young, right around here.
Yep.
We're always talking about him, and
True.
we're talking about the resurgence of the art that's going around here, and our local guys, all the way from graffiti guys that are no longer with us, that we still talk about. I mean, there's so much going on, and I feel that everything I've done, to me, carries a great deal of weight. But I think more importantly is when you hear why people get things. Like, I've had tattoos where it's like, hey, listen, my dad just died of cancer, and I really, I'm feeling really bad, and this is like the last letter he wrote to me, or this is my mom's signature on the last letter before she died, or, my son was just born, or, I got off drugs, or there's so many things. And I think when you're an artist, and it's a very interesting thing, because you get exposed to all this energy.
Correct.
And
yes.
you have to find a way to deal with it, transmute it into an actual art, but not let it affect your day, or not it affect who you are. And that's another thing you deal with as an artist. So for me, and I know you asked me specifically, but I think the fact that I'm able to sit with somebody and give them something that's within a degree of permanence.
Yeah.
for me is great because you literally live forever. So if, I'm at a certain age, if I tattoo somebody who's half my age, that means something that I did is very well going to outlive me.
Yes, I can see that.
And you carry your collection on you when it comes to a tattoo. I mean, like a lot of now when I do work, I'm more focused on like, if I'm going to paint somebody something, or if I'm going to do something for someone, I want to make sure that 20 years down the line, that piece isn't going to fall apart. So I'm always researching techniques. How am I going to curate this? Because I was noticing that I was doing that within my tattoos. It's like, hey, listen, you got to take care of your skin. You have to do your you have to have a proper diet, keep it going like that. So I'm always focused on that in the background, but even more after 2 decades in tattooing, it's something that's more in the forefront because it's not, I would love to do this forever, but the reality of the toll it takes on your body is very serious.
It does. Oh yeah. That's very interesting. The fact that you said you're like a confidence. Like people come and tell you, okay, this is my father passed away. I want something so meaningful to them.
Absolutely.
Have you ever had any kind of backlash with those things? Something that kind of like a miscommunication or something, and people just like.
You know what I have had?
Because personally, I have one of the tattoo right here that I hate, that I absolutely hate.
But why do you hate it?
It's just the way it was done. People don't even see what it is. They don't see. I think this is the execution of the tattoo that was not done properly.
But now you have choices. Like, for example, if you showed me that and if I was consulting with you, I'd be like, hey, listen, let me refer you to this laser person. I'll see you in 6 months, and then let's do something over it. Or you could literally laser it to the point where there's a semblance of what's there, but you're able to at least not have that there. So things that I think, strangely enough, what I have had is instant remorse.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Just like,
When I was, I think I was like maybe my 3rd year into tattooing, this woman came in and I think she was under a spell in the sense mentally. She wanted a tattoo. She wanted it. She was into it. Oh my gosh. I finished it. It was a nice little thing. I think at the time it was either a fairy or butterfly. That's what was the du jour of that moment. And I sat there and I was like, okay, you're done. And she's like, I don't like it.
Oh.
And I was
still in it.
I was fresh out of my apprenticeship. I'm like, oh wow, this is going to be a problem. Like, am I going to get fired over this? Am I going to get yelled at? Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to give this lady back her money. And I go, did I do something? She goes, no, I love it. I just don't know why I got a tattoo. And I was like,
she got sober.
She wasn't even under the influence.
No, she was
just
not.
under, like, she was like, I don't know. This was such a spur of the moment impulse thing. And I don't know why I did that. People getting boyfriend and girlfriend names.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I got my boyfriend's name. You did this. Can you help me? And at the time, it was funny because there was always like, the general formula for covering up a tattoo is basically you make squares the size of the tattoo on either side, on all 4 axes.
Okay.
And that usually is the best way, the proper formula. In other words, this is the size I would need to do something. Most people don't want that.
Yeah.
So I got this crazy idea. Do you remember a TV show called Married with Children?
Yes.
Void stamp.
Okay.
I would do that. And that would, I remember I would do it like, I had clients, it's like, I'd get a phone call. I can't believe you voided out my name. Blah, 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 blah. I thought we were friends, blah, 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 blah. So I did that for a while and it was funny. I would tell the guy, I'm like, look, man, it's red ink. We're going to go over it.
It's red ink, yes.
Because red is easy to go over. I'm like, let's just do this and whatever, and let's see if we cover it up. Now I tell people, I'm like, look, same thing I told you, laser it out.
Laser it out, yes.
It's funny how it used to be like, death, taxes, and tattoos are the most permanent things in the world. I think tattoos getting crossed out of that because it's like you can get it. I mean, like there's so much that can be done. So I do see things like that. And then another thing is, and you were talking about the remorse things, people change. So
people change, yes.
Tattooing is very interesting because like when you're in tattooing, you're able to read the tattoos people get, and there is such a thing as reading tattoos. The difference between a poorly executed house tattoo, a jailhouse tattoo, traditional tattoos, tribal tattoos, Miami street tattoos, black and gray. There's a whole entire gamut, and sometimes people early on get tattoos, and then they change in their life, or they realize sometimes that maybe that tattoo might be not so much holding them back, but people are already painting a picture of that person and marginalizing them because of what they have on themselves. That's why.
Oh, yes.
That's why I tell people, I'm like, this is very permanent. And even within the permanence, there is a set of impermanence, but it's going to cost you money, pain, and time to get it out. So be very wise with what you choose. I mean, I remember clients 20 years ago, oh, I want to get MOB. And then, just recently I would see them, I'm like, you got 2 kids and a wife. Are you still MOB? Like for real, or I'll get guys that get all covered up, and then, they started out at one point in their life and, they've transitioned into something else and gone forward and progressed.
And getting a job and...
and regrettably, traveling between here and the Caribbean and other places, we are very blessed that we are a lot more open-minded, because the level of open-mindedness that we take to art and what's going on here artistically and how we dress and who we are is not necessarily the same in all parts of the world.
No, it is not.
And
it definitely is not, no.
Yeah. So that's definitely a factor.
Have you actually mentored any other artists to...
Absolutely.
You say you own your own shop now, so...
Well, no. I did own a shop.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I transitioned out of that 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to go in a different direction. I took a pivot. I took some time to myself as well. I started exploring the Dominican Republic, like I told you, reconnecting with family down there, so that was very important. I mentored a lot of artists, actually. In 13 years, I want to say over 10 plus people, a lot of people that have their shops, people that are now very well-known artists, some people that decided to go into a different realm of art and are doing very well for themselves. The mentorship process is very important when it comes to art, I feel. I think everybody needs a mentor. And
absolutely.
And it was very nice because I was able to mentor people and then myself be not so much mentored, have people that were I was mentored formally for certain things, but have people that were very open to teaching, which I love because I feel like everybody should learn a little. And I've learned stuff from people half my age, people twice my age, so I always try to keep myself within that. But to answer your question, I have mentored quite a few people in the South Florida tattoo community and the art community as well. As of the beginning of this year, I've been tattooing. From the last 4 years that I took the pivot, I've been tattooing a little bit more. I've let the dust settle of pivoting out of the shop. I do a lot of work internationally when I go down to the Caribbean and across the United States. I've been doing a lot more of that, and I found the thing is, I spent so much time in the tattoo industry, and the tail end of the tattoo industry, post-pandemic, even before that.
Yeah, that must, for so many people, this was a weird time.
It was a weird time, and then I think the Great Leave and people's priorities shifted. And in the beginning, I used to be very critical of that, but then stepping outside of that and myself going through a shift, realized, wait, like the world's changed. Like we literally got a taste of you may really die tomorrow. I remember when we opened up, we would ask about our clients, and they were like, "Oh, this person passed, or this one's in the hospital." And I'd ask artists like, "Where you're not coming in?" It's like, "I'm not going. Like that's it. Like this. What? The world was ending a moment ago. You really want me to?"
It was ending. We thought it was ending.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I did was I started to. I took some time to myself. I worked on my health. Tattooing is very, very taxing on your body. And just started doing stuff that I really liked, and getting to the point where if I'm going to do something, I really want to be like, hey, I like this, and I'm not doing... Tattooing for a while got rather masturbatory. It was do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'm like, why am I jumping through hoops? Am I really enjoying this? Yeah, the money's there, but, between the... having to split my time between personal life, I found myself more focused on the politics of dealing with creative individuals in a group setting, being able to quantize that into money and not having to kill everybody was starting to be very, very taxing. Okay. So and also I just did not like the direction that the tattoo industry was going and where I was at. So I was like, hey, I think it's time to expand out and see how it is and just kind of observe, and also be able to do what I do, but do it for me and in my way, and that's kind of where I'm at. So I've been enjoying actually researching styles, designs, things that I enjoy within the tattoo world, and then just expounding upon that, and then actually like bringing in a lot of what I like, that period that I did take more into art and into street art and into not fine art, but more art on canvas, if you will, and bringing it back around. So it's like everything's coming weirdly full circle, for certain things. A lot of the things that I learned in tattoo are now I'm seeing in my canvas work and in my street work. And then a lot of the things that I was experimenting with that, like working bigger, different styles, being looser too, because tattooing is very formal and rigid. But
I can imagine, yes.
Yeah, funny enough, a lot of artists from Europe, specifically France, Germany, Spain, Russia, started experimenting with styles that were more abstract. Not using a stencil, brushing work on, different techniques. And in the beginning, I just didn't understand it because I didn't really have time to process it and digest it. So I started really taking time and seeing, maybe I don't like this, but why is my eye so attracted to it? What is he doing? And then I think a lot of it was, I was like, maybe it's the jealousy of the fact that while I have to stick to all these lines and be so rigid and formal, this guy can just like kind of throw it on and it works.
Yeah.
So I started just kind of like playing within, finding if there was a middle ground, which I did find that there kind of was, because what I started realizing is the mentality that I had that everything had to be almost absolute perfect, which it never is, because there's no way. You're a human.
You're human, yeah.
Exactly. I started seeing the beauty and the joy of being able to tell that, and specifically now that it's very important, that a human did it. Because right now we're getting to the point where there's a machine right now that will grab the Mona Lisa or a classical piece and tattoo it on you.
Yes.
And it looks good and it's healed good. And that's something that I never thought that I'd see. And more importantly, with an AI, I can sit there and, put up a prompt, into Midjourney, and a design that would have taken me months to research, the machine does it. So like now I'm seeing the beauty of something that like, that line might not be so perfect, or I can see how this is a person did it. And I'm finding the joy in that again.
Very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. Is there any way as an artist, because everybody is trying to push themselves to find something different, a different route, a different approach, would you be able, or have you experiment maybe using some of the tattooing tools into a canvas, like using some of the, whatever it's called, those little guns things,
machines,
into machines into a canvas? Would it be possible to do this?
Actually, there is a artist who pioneered he adapted a tattoo machine to grip a pen.
Okay.
So the stippling technique is now available to be used on paper. I'm sure it'll get to the point you'd be able to use it on canvas with some sort of a marker or some sort of a thing like that. So that's there. And then just recently, I was going through social media and I found an artist that was actually using tattoo machines to do designs on leather. So
I can see that.
It is coming over, which is very, very interesting to see how, again, and I've always felt like, man, there's so many artists out there, even down here, that are graffiti artists, street artists, fine artists, that are tattoo artists. So it's always like this weird, I feel like the barrier is not impermeable. We kind of go back and forth with it. So I have seen a couple of techniques like that. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I used to throw away my old inks. And most tattoo inks is usually a proprietary blend of vegetable-based pigment, glycerin, and a couple few ingredients that most artists like. It's kind of like a house secret, if you will, but it is what it is. That's what it is. We live in that. That was us, and I do like to give it its respect. But now I realize, I go, wait a second, this pigment, while no longer probably good for a person, looks great on paper, or I've been able to experiment with it. So now I've been doing that and realizing, because there's certain mediums that'll take it, and certain stuff where it'll bounce off or powder out. So it's been funny exploring with that as well.
See, that's exactly what I had in mind.
That is a thing. So it's very interesting to see how some things kind of like cross over as far as equipment-wise and technique-wise.
Yeah, if you think about some of the graffiti writers, they were using all kinds of tips, because whatever the spray can, they were they were able to buy by in the late 70s or 80s. They were using something from the
a Rust-Oleum can and an easy off tip.
Always, and they were carving the tips with the cutter and everything. It's just like so it's like I can only imagine. Trying, since you have these tools in hands, that you are, when you're tattooing, someone say, okay, well, I got to experiment that into a different medium.
I think the craziest thing is that a lot of the can manufacturers, sometimes I look at their product catalogs and I'm like, wait a second, that shade is, for example, there's a shade of blue that I like, tropical teal. Another company calls it 57 Chevy. I see that teal in a company catalog and I'm like, so I have the bottle, I'm like holding the bottle up to the paper, and then I get the can, I'm like, wow, dude, it's crazy how a lot of the palettes are shared. I'm sure it's not done intentionally, or maybe it is, I don't know, but it's kind of nice to see. And there's a guy out there, Dave Tevenall, and the guy will sit there and do a gorgeous tattoo piece and then turn around and do it on the wall. Davey Blows as well. Yeah. Mike Giant, Tony Schiavaro. We have our people that do that kind of thing, and it's really cool to watch.
It is so cool to watch, and it's such an incredible story. So, unfortunately, this is the time we have today.
That's fine. I hope I got most of your questions down.
Oh my gosh, you got so many questions. I found it absolutely mesmerizing, talking to everybody about their different things.
Amazing,
and I'm so grateful that everybody comes on the mic and share a little something about what they do, what they feel about. You really, when you talk about these people coming and telling you, okay, my dad passed away, this is what I want and everything, they're really okay. I think this is pretty deep to talk about all those things. And this is exactly what I want in this podcast, to just get the juicy stuff, the essence.
I've always said it, that it's people such as yourself that are actually curating, taking the time out of their lives to write down. Tattooing for the longest time was an oral tradition that was passed down, kind of like what we're doing now. And only recently have people gotten very serious about documenting, curating, and creating the history. So, as an artist, it's very much your responsibility to give time out to people such as yourself, so that your story may be told down the line and you can be part of the greater picture.
The greater picture, yes.
It's nice to see that our South Florida artist community is actually taking part of this and putting it together for everybody.
Yeah, we have such a beautiful art community down here. I am so grateful to be a little part of it. Yeah. And then to make friends, and then to meet new people, and to share ideas, and to bringing something nice and fresh.
It's nice to see everybody out. It's always cool. I always see you out, and it's good to see that sense of community within South Florida. So, good times.
Well, Asaad, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Like I said, this is the time we have for today, guys. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good.
With another artist. I don't know if he's going to be tattooing, if he's going to be, or if she's going to be doing yarn bombing, or if this is someone I met a couple of weeks ago who's an art appraiser also, that I want to have on the podcast. I'm very, very curious to talk with this young lady and sit down and share that story with you guys.
I think it's going to be very cool.
Yeah, it should be fun. All right. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much again. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.